did that happen? How did you, or how were you motivated to, or how did you get your mission in life, first of all? And how did you take that individual philosophy, that individual mission, and build it into a business? That's an interesting way to think about it. That's exactly why we want to talk about the entrepreneurial spirit. And that's what I believe an entrepreneurial spirit is. When you, and partly because of many of the literature that I've read about entrepreneurship and solving individual problems, when you see, it's almost like an interpretive structure, the way you view the world. Let's say you're going to do something, and what you're going to do, it must be beneficial to you. It must be beneficial to your family. It must be beneficial to your community. It must be beneficial to your society. It must be beneficial to your culture, and even as far as the extension of your of the environment. So that's an interesting way to interpret the world, and that's what a mission is. So hello, everyone. It brings me great pleasure to introduce our topic and our speaker for the evening. Today, we will be speaking with Miss Kimberly Findlay. Miss Kimberly has worked in the administrative industry for 6 years. She is an administrative secretary and is also an entrepreneur. Miss Findlay is the proud owner of Armor Bearer Virtual Assistant and Kismet Blossoms. As part of the youth advocacy industry, Kimberly has worked hard to empower the youth of her country through a variety of youth organizations, such as Volunteer Assistant Secretary at the St. Lucia National Youth Council, Secretary to Shrewsbury Youth and Sports Council, and now owns Uncommon Girl Ministry that enables young women who would like to strengthen on the relationship with Christ. Due to her passion for caring for young women, she has acquired an organization called Uncommon Girl Alliance, which is a social enterprise to educate, empower, and elevate women and teen girls at risk and who are also underprivileged. Kimberly has earned multiple experiences and networking opportunities due to her many involvement in youth advocacy. Kimberly lives in the community of Saltibus with her family. When she isn't working hard at her businesses, you'll find her spending time with her family on an excursion. Welcome, Kimberly. All right. We spoke about the fact that you are interested in entrepreneurship. Tell me what motivated you to take up that entrepreneurial role as a young lady.
Well, I grew up with a family of 7 of us. So I have actually 4 brothers. I'm the only girl. So it's me and my mom who are girls in the house. And she raised me to be independent, to ensure that I have my own things. I have a name for myself. I have my own businesses, own home, own land. You know, all these nice things that they want their children to prosper in. And with my job, it does not allow me to get the nice things that I want. I like to have a side hustle because my mom always would lecture me. She would literally give me that advice and say, you know what, you cannot have one source of income coming in. You will struggle a lot. You will find it hard to keep up, to pay your bills, to get what you want, to save. So I would advise you to try and look for something that would generate money and give you extra income. And I couldn't think of anything, but I'm a very creative person. So I started Kismet Blossoms, and that's a snack bouquet company where your favorite snacks are assembled in a bouquet, the form of a bouquet. And it's very unique. I like unique things as well. So I'm like, you know what, persons don't really have that here. I've not seen anybody that idea. You have gift baskets, you have all these generic things, but nobody has a snack bouquet. Started the business, it went well. But I'm like, this is not bringing in the profit, you know? And then I end up Armor Bearer Virtual Assistant. And this one came about through the grace of God. This one was totally God's plan. It was not my plan. Yes, I wanted something else to do, that would bring in profit and I wouldn't have to purchase raw materials, but it was just all him. And he gave me Uncommon Girl Ministry for years now, since I was in my teens. He gave me that ministry because that's my mission, to minister to young persons, to empower, educate, and elevate them through the word of God. And it's been a struggle, doing that, because persons who look at me, oh, we're the same age, you're probably going through the same things, why would I want to listen to you? So all of these things made me an entrepreneur, and I love it. I must say I love it. It's hard work. 9 to 5 is an easy job, but being an entrepreneur, you don't sleep because you have to work in a wee hours of the night, burning that midnight oil, ensuring that everything is done to the T.
All right, great. Let me just take it from the point where you said you are. Let's just speak about Uncommon Girl Ministries for a little bit, because you said it's your mission. And what I find interesting is that your mission is built into a business, and that's very interesting to see that you having a mission for your life, and that mission is built. You build it into a business structure. So how did that happen? How were you motivated to, or how did you get your mission in life, first of all? And how did you take that individual philosophy, that individual mission, and build it into a business? That's an interesting way to think about it. That's exactly why we want to talk about the entrepreneurial spirit. And that's what I believe an entrepreneurial spirit is. When you, and partly because of many of the literature that I've read about entrepreneurship and solving individual problems, when you see it's almost like an interpretive structure, the way you view the world. Let's say you're going to do something, and what you're going to do, it must be beneficial to you. It must be beneficial to your family. It must be beneficial to your community. It must be beneficial to your society. It must be beneficial to your culture, and even as far as the extension of your of the environment. So that's an interesting way to interpret the world, and that's what a mission is. So tell me about your mission, and how did you get to Uncommon Girl being a business?
Okay, so God gave me the calling to go forth and preach to the young people. I'm like, preach? That's not for me preaching. And he was like, yes, you have the ability to go out and meet these people where they are. And I've seen so many young persons just living their life with no purpose. I'll put it like that. They don't know their worth. They don't know what to do. Their mindset is not there. And you have to start at a young age, so you develop with that mindset and you progress. Did Uncommon Girl Ministry. It happened first in my home church, where I ministered to the young ladies and the young men at the church. And then it transferred to an online platform. It was not meant to happen, but persons were like, you know what, we really need to reach out to you, and you need to do more because you have so much to share and to give encouragement to young persons. So you need to do it like that. So I did it this way. I started with a YouTube channel and lo and behold, someone saw it was the St. Lucia Youth Business Trust, and they said that they're looking for persons with social enterprises. Now, I cater to underprivileged young people, persons who are at risk as well. And they were like, you're a perfect fit to be part of the program. Now, going into the program, but it's a ministry, there's no business aspect to it. And that's where I was wrong. You know, everything that you're doing, there is a business aspect to it. You might not be making physical money, but it's producing some kind of income into your life and into somebody else's life. And when we did the program, they showed me that it could actually be a business where I create these products, have the ministry's logo on it, and generate income to take care of the activities that I'm hosting for these youth, and to also give back to them. So the money is not only for myself or for the ministry, it goes back to the youth. As an entrepreneur, if you're the only one gaining in the business, you're doing something wrong.
And that's the whole idea. That's the whole idea. Sorry for interrupting. That's the whole idea called stakeholders capitalism. And stakeholders capitalism is the economic structure that comes with Industry 4.0, the fourth industrialized revolution. And the idea in stakeholders capitalism, exactly how you're explaining it, is that when the profits what the business is doing must be not only beneficial to the capitalist or the person that's in charge of the business, but it must give back to the stakeholders. It must give back to the people involved. It must give back to even the customers. It must give back
Yeah.
to the organized. It must give back to the community. It must benefit the community in some deep sense. So that's the idea of stakeholders capitalism, and that's exactly where we are in our social consciousness. We have an
Yes.
economic structure an industrial structure that benefits not only you but every other stakeholder in your organization, every other stakeholder that you serve. Go ahead.
Yes, and that way I was able to network with persons I have already been working with. So you're creating that link, that chain to work with other people to bring in the resources, to bring in the opportunities for your target market. If nothing like that is happening with your business, you need to analyze, you need to sit down and restructure your entire business because you're doing it wrong. If you're not benefiting others, what's the use of you having a business? So this is how Uncommon Girl end up being a entrepreneur, right, in the entrepreneurship industry as well. It was not meant to be, but then I understood why it has to be.
Yeah, and
Through the program.
that's exactly what the entrepreneurial spirit is like I said earlier, and that's a very that's a nice way for it to manifest itself organically. It's not
Yes.
since I'm trying to do it consciously, it's one thing, but when it manifests itself organically, it shows that there is a specific awareness that our environment and our society is moving towards, and it just manifests inside of you organically. So you said you preach to the young people, and I want you to tell me, what do you mean by preaching, and what is it that you're saying to the young people?
Okay, so preaching sounds to me like you've been a pastor, and I didn't like that. So I'm actually teaching values as to be a Christian, to be a proper Christian, to have a healthy relationship with Christ. And a lot of us are afraid, especially young persons, to remove ourselves from things of the world and to actually follow what God has called us to do. So we're thinking, okay, my friends will say, I'm too holy now. I used to do this, but now I'm not living that way anymore. Like we will feel that we will be ridiculed for living out in our faith. So my mission is to ensure you have a platform, which is Uncommon Girl Ministry. You could come in and express yourself in your faith. Don't be shy to do that. There is a community that will accept you with open arms, and you can even grow. And that way you'll be even more confident to go out and evangelize to your friends as well. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm having this week was my first week for Bible study. Now they want Bible study every week. The girls want Bible study every week. And I have a Sunday live show on Instagram where we discuss topics that are I wouldn't say too much for the church to discuss, but that's how they make it appear. So topics that are bold, we discuss it, and persons are just loving it. They're like, we don't get to have these discussions at church, and we're so grateful for the platform where we could come in, be confident enough, be comfortable enough to share our views on the matter.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the fact that you're using the social platforms as a tool. And recently I was speaking to a friend of mine and I was telling him, do you sit down and hold a hammer in your hand the whole day? He's like, no. I'm like, but exactly, a hammer is a tool. So why are we using social media all the time, every time, without any stop, without any regulation? Because my perception and comes to your perception of how you see social media. Social media, the media aspect of it, supposed to be a tool, and it's a tool that you use to do something. and seeing that you're using the
Correct.
tool to bring forth your belief. And I will ask you this question. Do you know how you interpret the world and the environment around you? Since you're doing this, there is something that is important that you're doing. And you as the individual, you need to understand the way you interpret the world, the way you see things, the way that you interact with the world from your point of view. So how do you interpret the world? Do you see your environment around you as a place of opportunity or as a place of limitation? And how does that affect your belief, the way that you interpret the world?
Okay, first off, it needs to be more surrounded about your mindset. If you believe that you're going to stick to how your parents were raised and you're going to do the same mistakes that they did just because, okay, that's what they've been doing, that would form your environment and it will affect your mindset. But if you remove from that state and you're like, you know what, I want to be better, I want to have something good for myself, I don't want to repeat these mistakes, you're actually breaking these generational curses. So for me, I don't allow my environment to limit my abilities. I would use the lessons, I would use the experiences from other persons, even my own, and become better because I don't want to be stagnant. I don't want to repeat other people's faults. So I will learn from that and I will transition it into being something better because I need to show those coming after me that you can become something better in life rather than saying, okay, everybody's committing crimes, I'm committing crimes as well. You're not a part of that. You're set different, set apart. The Bible spoke about that. We need to be set apart. So that's how we have to do it. We were not created to be mediocre and to be like, okay, everything is falling apart around me, I'm just going to stay depressed. Pick up yourself, move forth, do something great, make your name be known out there. That's what we were created to do.
Great, wonderful, and just to add to that, I'm just saying when I look around, you see that a lot of the ways that we interpret the world as human beings, and that's a human thing. We interpret the world in it towards in a way that what's in front of us is what's most valuable to us. What is most valuable to us, we look onto that thing, and the thing that is the highest value for us as individuals. So you have to ask yourself, what is most valuable to me as an individual? Is it my instinctual, is it my instinctual drives? Is it the drives of my body? What is most valuable to me? Is it my social outlook, my identity, my image? What is most valuable to me in short term and long term? And that's a general, a general theory and in biology, the way that we as human beings, the way that we are constructed biologically, the way that we see with our physical
Yeah.
eyes, the lights come through our pupil and goes back to our retina. And on your retina, there's a small depression called the fovea, and it's not all the way, or it's not all the way on your retina. It's a small part of your retina. So you have to actually point your eyes towards looking at something so that you could see it, so that every other thing falls at the side of it when you focus your eyes on it. And that's exactly how human beings are supposed to believe. We're supposed to point our attention, our attentional priority towards something. And when we see that thing, other things fall at the side of it. And Helen Keller was actually a blind and deaf person. And she actually made a statement that was very profound in this. She said, most people are born with sight and no vision. You have the ability to see physically, but you don't have the ability to see mentally and spiritually. So that's exactly how I understand Christ works for us. Christ is like a spiritual aim that we have to try to be like in our mental and our physical point. So we have to aim properly. And a lot of what's happening right now with our young person is the fact that we don't know what we're doing. We have absolutely no idea what we're aiming at. We don't know what we're aiming at. And your aim, like I wrote in my book, Purpose Driven, your aim is what gives your life meaning. And one of the things one of the great authors that I read, Viktor Frankl, he said, persons, he wrote a book called, this book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he said, human beings who do not have a valuable meaning in life they will normally find themselves being driven by addictions and aggression and all of the things that
Yes,
inside of the body. So you must be able to subject the body in some sense to a higher aim, to something that is valuable so that you could aim at it, so that you could move towards it. If you do not have something to move towards, where do you go? You go everywhere and
exactly.
nowhere at the same time. So that's one of the problems that we are facing. It's interesting that it's interesting that you are aware of that. And the best person to be aware of something like that is you, because of the ministry that you have, Uncommon Girl, and
Yeah.
speaking to young persons about these things. So one of the things that I read from Socrates, he said, an unexamined life is not worth living. And that's actually a self-reflection question. So what would you say on that statement? An unexamined life is not worth living. And Socrates was a great Greek philosopher. He speak about a lot of
Yes,
things.
you
A lot of what we do in the Western world is based on their thought process. And he said an
are. Mhm.
unexamined life is not worth living. So can you expound on that? What do you agree? Do you disagree?
I agree 100% with his statement. And we could see that in our everyday lives. We could see that in other people's life. Um, one of the things is that we are too prideful to examine our own life because we believe if for example somebody comes to tell us, you know, what you're doing, um, it's not really good. The way that you speak, if you speak a little more humbling, then you definitely will reach more persons. And you need to change that kind of lifestyle. You have more etiquette. But we'll find it so hurtful. Doesn't matter how you say it, will still hurt me. But if I could literally sit down and say, you know what I'm doing is hurting me, not the other person, but it's hurting me first because I'm the one who's putting it out there. I'm the one who is hanging on to these heavy things. So if you don't examine your life, you're not living right. You're living in this torment. You're always angry. Why? Because you have a bad temper. Anything somebody say, you're ready to attack them, right? Are you happy? Are you satisfied? No. You're always searching for something that will make you happy. All of these things. So if you're not examining yourself, if you're not sitting down and analyze, you know what, I need to change my life. For example, us as Christians, we always go back to this point because we're Christians. As you're tired, you get up, boy, I have to go, time for me to go to work. And when it comes to nighttime, you're too tired to kneel down to pray. We know that all these things are not pleasing to God because we're not giving him any time out of our busy schedule, to interact with him, to let him know what's going on and all of these things. We don't even open our Bibles until it's Sunday or Saturday. Now,
Yeah.
this, they're not good to do.
Hmm.
You're still doing it.
Yeah. And
How is
mhm.
it impacting your life? You've seen everything bad is happening to you. Why me? Why that happening to me today? I have knocked my toes 6 times today. Why is that happening? It's because you have neglected the only source that could help you, that will bring you forward, that will change you, that will protect you. But you're focused on doing things your way. You're focused on me, 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 me. You're focused on getting the job right. You're focused on getting the work on time. You're focused about your family. Your mindset is all over the place, but it's not focused like we spoke about earlier. We're not having that focus. Okay, at 5 o'clock, I have to wake up. I need to do devotions. Because trust me, if you do that, you're having more time in the day. You've ever done that? Like you wake up, okay, today, 5 o'clock, time for me and Jesus. And then throughout the day, time is moving out so well for you. Everything else is falling into place. Even if something bad happens, you're at peace. You're like, okay, it wasn't meant to be. That's fine.
And that's one of the
So that's
things
how
that I
I
was
see it.
that's one of the things that I was wrestling with a while ago. What you saying making so much sense, and that's what I'm trying to get at with this podcast. So if you're focusing on something physically, you're focusing on something in our physical space. Let's say like you're focusing on getting to work on time. Let's use that, like the example that you use. So, and you'll find that you're lacking in the ability to focus on that physical aim. And what I've come to understand is that if you cannot focus your mind, you are unable to focus you are unable to focus yourself in the physical realm. But how do you take control, or not take control, or how do you focus the mind? You need to have a spiritual focus. You need to have a spiritual aim. And that spiritual aim
Yes.
is Christ. So if you are not grounded in a spiritual aim, it's almost impossible to have a mental aim, and it's almost impossible to attain a physical goal. You need to have a spiritual aim,
Yes.
and that's the importance. And some persons can be cynical of God, and you can see our environment and our society is going down to the path where a lot of our young persons, even though they don't say it using their words, their actions might say that a lot of us don't fear or respect the idea of God or what God is. But really and truly, there's no human growth without understanding or without having a spiritual aim. And that spiritual aim, that's the major, that is the major reason why Christ came. And he said, he gave us that
Mm-hmm.
aim. He gave us something like that. And the statement, the self-reflection statement kind of reminds me of when Apostle Paul said, you must always examine yourself to see if you are in the faith. And the word faith here is,
Yes.
it can be synonymous to belief in that context. And belief is what you add. Belief is what you might believe is the pursuit of an objectivity of human existence. So the belief that we hold as Christians is that life is objective. Life is objective. There are things that are good and bad about life, and there are ways of being that we should follow in life. There are principles that actually guide life. And one of the thinkers that spoke about that, Carl Rogers, he was a humanistic thinker. He said there is a difference between congruence and incongruence. And he was saying sometimes we can think of ourselves mentally in one way. We can think that we are that person in one way, but in reality, we are incongruent. We are not the thoughts we have about ourselves, and we think we have a spiritual aim. We think we walking along the the path to the path to objectivity, but in reality, we don't have any idea what we're doing. And my definition of belief is that it's not what you say in your head. Belief is actually what you do. What you do has more
Yeah.
importance to persons that see you or to persons around you or in your society than what you hold true in your head. So I'm trying to ground principles. I'm trying to ground knowledge. I'm trying to ground ideas or concepts you have in your head to a behavior. Because sometimes a lot of us, we have ideas in our head and we can articulate these ideas so very well. And we can use so many words to articulate these ideas. But in the physical place, in our behavior, in the way we act, it's not that it's impossible, but we do not have a pathway to act out those ideas that we have in our head. So we're saying one thing, we believe in one thing, but then it's the small incremental progress steps that we must take to get
Yeah.
to to act out what we believe. It's so difficult to get that done, and that's what I'm trying to do,
Yeah.
to ground a structure of knowledge in something physical, and that physical thing is human behavior. We have to try to ground our knowledge in the way that we behave. The way we think must match the way that we behave. We cannot be incongruent. And so, as persons who believe, as persons of Christians who believe and we're in the faith, we tend to come across as being incongruent to the onlooker. And that itself can be something that actually push persons away. Exactly one of the things that you do in the Uncommon Good Ministries. So when you're saying something, not saying that you're a perfect person, you cannot fall short. Not saying that
Yeah.
we all have our shortcomings, and to be able to understand your shortcomings for what it is, and to continue to aim at that higher ethic, continue to aim at that higher value, continue to aim at that spiritual aim, to align your mental aim and your physical aim. It will have you to able to make meaningful sacrifices. And that's why this is very important to reflect and look at yourself, because you do not want to come across as being incongruent. The worst thing to come across as being incongruent. You are not aligned with what you believe. Not saying that you cannot make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you have to admit that you make the mistakes, because if what you do is not a mistake, then your belief is subjective. You don't believe, your belief is not objective, and it goes, you actually saying that you believe in objectivity, but then your behavior is saying, or your behavior is promoting subjectivity. That's something that's very, especially in the West right now, in the Western society, we are actually going against objectivity. We are actually saying existence is based on your interpretation. What you interpret good to be,
Yes,
that's what it is. What you interpret yourself, your feelings, that's what it is. And that's a really attack. That's really an attack on the Judeo-Christian belief. And we as persons, we need to understand how those things are coming and how we can address those things.
I agree. And I'm glad that you mentioned that in our society specifically, that it's allowing us to create these different beliefs. We already have so many religions, and they're creating this open door where we, especially the young persons, will be like, oh well, I don't have to do this because God is love. Doesn't mean that we can, doesn't mean we have to do things against what he asks of us just because he's love. He will forgive you. They have consequences. There are things that you'll be punished for doing. So why is it that it's okay for us to do these things, to disobey God, but we listen to everything that is happening in our culture? We're listening to the government. We're listening to pastors, because we have some pastors that put out these doctrines that are crazy, and our audience or congregation will be like, oh yes, pastor said this and pastor said that. So if we're allowing these things to come into our lives, we're definitely down for a lot, because God does not play with these things. He's given us many, many chances to fix ourselves again, analyzing ourselves, observing what we're doing that's wrong. He's given us these opportunities. But when we see a natural disaster, we wonder, oh, God, forgive us, have mercy. And then when he has mercy, we forget about him all over again the next day. So
yeah, and it's partly, and I'm speaking psychologically here. It's and you could see how persons don't understand that there are consequences to your behavior, no matter what you do, no matter what it is. The way that we go about life, it is built that what you do, even your words have consequences. Your consequence to
yes,
your words, there are consequences to your actions. And like you were saying that, and we have that behavior that persons would literally say God is love to accept certain mediocrity. And sometimes we might say that, okay, God punish you because you didn't follow the rule, God punish you. But I'm saying, okay, let's think about it in a different way. What if the rule itself punish you? One of the great books that I've read was something by Miles Monroe, and he said human beings cannot break principles. Principles break human beings. It's almost like God doesn't have to punish you. God saying there's a rule that says if you go above the building, you jump down, you will either die or break a leg. You're going to go up and say, okay, I'm going to jump off the building and have faith that nothing happens. And God is love, nothing is going to happen to me. It's an objective truth that you cannot defy gravity. So no matter what you do, no matter how much things that you pray and you say in your head, the fact that existence is based on objectivity. We cannot change gravity. That's just what it is. It's a principle. You cannot break principles. Principles break you. And that's how I understand the word of God. The word of God is principles that we have to follow. And if we don't follow the principles, we are going to fall short. And it's not going to be God punish you, or it's just the fact that you didn't follow the principles and things went bad. And sometimes, and the beauty of God is where grace comes in. When we talk about grace and mercy, sometimes he has mercy, but not all the time. It depends. based on the situation, based on your level of ignorance, that could be left for speculation. But even that too is something that we can delve right into. The problem we face in the 21st century as humanity is lack of meaning in life. This nihilism manifests itself in different ways. To maintain a civilization, more than half of the population must hold true to the fact that life has meaning. If not, the structure of our civilization will crumble. Join me as I try to wrestle with the idea of restoring meaning in life via a valuable aim. You can find my books on Amazon. The link is provided below. You spoke about the amount of things that you do with your three businesses, and I think that's very impressive. And you said it's hectic, and you said it's a bit difficult. But how do you overcome the impulses of procrastination? We know every human being have that instinct to procrastinate, that desire to procrastinate. Procrastination, how do you overcome procrastination, slothfulness, and despair for the attainment of your aims? Because sometimes persons are not afraid of success. Persons are not afraid of failure sometimes. Sometimes persons are afraid of being successful. And I had that experience once. I read this and I had the experience. Like, what if that actually work out? Like your aims are so impressive to you. Let's just say, what if it work out? What do I do then? That's a fearful experience that persons don't even realize that they might have sometimes. So how do you as an individual, and that's a self-mastery question, how do you overcome the instinct for because the brain was not wired for difficulty. The brain was wired for survival. And the reason being is that back when we were living in the jungle, we were not as civilized as we are now. Our brain used to have detecting senses that we would see the snake, we would see the bear, we would see the lion, and the snake just comes up with that. The brain sends cortisol and hormone called cortisol so that we now can have flight or fright situation so that we could run away from the danger. So we have built a mechanism where our whole brain, our whole nervous system is almost built for survival, security, and comfort. So going out of that and going out into the unknown and going out into the uncomfortable situations to manage those free businesses you have, how did you get to that? How did you pull yourself away from your biology altogether?
I'll be honest with you, Kev. I am one of these young ladies who prefer to stay reserved till my death time because I am so scared in persons looking at me and staring at me or looking up to me that sometimes I would cower away from opportunities just because I'm feeling that I'm not good enough to be there for that person or to be in that opportunity. Like, why me? Why did you choose me? I don't understand. I cannot speak properly. Why would you want me to be there? And procrastination is real. It's one of the, I would just want to say it's one of the tactics of the enemy where you're progressing, you want to be successful, you have these goals written down in your nice little notebook, but then you're waking up like, you see me today, I don't want to do anything. It's not that you're tired, it's just that you have that overwhelming feeling of not doing anything. And the way that I have coped with it is writing things down. So I have planners, to-do list till tomorrow, and I must accomplish these things before the day ends. Sometimes one or two things don't get accomplished because I have so much doing, so then it gets transferred to the next day. So that's my system. If I don't write it down, I will not do it. Writing it down makes me feel committed. It gives me that dedication to move, to actually get it done. And when I'm working, I don't stop until I have everything done. So that's my drive to beat procrastination. If it's not written, Kimi is not doing it. I will skip it. And slothfulness, how would I put it? Being slow is one of my weaknesses. Like, I know I have to do the thing, but I want to do it at a specific time. To me, I always believe I have enough time so I could do it. And it ruins a lot of my opportunity. And I had to learn the hard way. You know what? Get your things done as soon as it needs to be done. Don't say tomorrow. Tomorrow is not promised. It's not yours. You don't know what is going to happen. Just get it done. This week was a big example. Someone calls me. They're like, is your passport valid? I'm like, well, well, it's not. And I was supposed to renew it since the day, but I was just dragging because I have nowhere to go. I have not been traveling for a long time. What's the sense of me going to renew it? And then this week I had to renew it quickly because there's an opportunity for me to represent young persons in St. Lucia. So I'm like, you know what? That taught me a big lesson. Just get it done. You have something to do, get that. You have somebody to call, just do it. Because we get these little insights. You know what, you need to call that person today. You need to check on that person. But we'll be like, okay, I'll call that person. The day ends, you don't call them, and then tomorrow you're getting to know that person is ill or something happens. But the Holy Spirit already give it to you. You need to call that person. So it's like that. You have to do it, just do it. So this is how I cope with it. That's how I deal with it. That's my system, and it's been working for me so far.
All right. I want to run an idea by you. There's this book that I read from Willie Lynch Letters. I cannot remember the author's name, but it's the Willie Lynch Letters. And basically the idea in the book is that Willie Lynch used certain psychological tricks so that he could continue to hold his slaves, and not even hold his slaves, but when he came to the Caribbean, he was saying to the other slave owners that, hey, you still have your slaves in chains? Do you still beat your chains? That's actually breaking your product. Why are you breaking or destroying your product? Because you actually pay money for them. Why are you destroying? He told them, hey, I have a system. And I have a system that would actually make the slaves serve you without you having to beat them, or without you having to coerce them. And the idea that he brought to them was that you have to firstly make the males psychologically weak. When you make the males psychologically weak and you make the females psychologically strong, and the way he did that was that he took the biggest male out of the pack, took the biggest male out of the plantation, and he would actually tie each arm to a horse and tie one leg to a horse, and he would rip that male apart for all of them to see. And something else he did, and I think I'm okay. And that's one of the things that he did to bring fear into them, so that the mother of the boys now would raise the boys in a way for them to not disobey the master, because they have seen the cruelty of the master. And the mother now is raising the girls to be a lot more psychologically stronger to overcome certain things like rape or certain things that would break them. So you find a situation where the males are physically strong but psychologically weak. And you have a situation where naturally the women are physically weaker than the male, all things considered, and then they are psychologically strong. But then you're going to ask yourself, what is the influence of a psychologically strong female and a psychologically weak male? Look at our society. Look at you, the amount of things that you're doing. Look at you. You could as well be three people all together, all things considered, the amount of things that you're doing. And you would look at our society and you would not judging harshly, because I find myself reading that, I find myself, oh wow, that's true. I am psychologically weak. And when you say psychologically weak, what do you mean? How do you deal with emotions? Can you deal with emotions? Can you make sacrifices? Can you project your mind into the future and formulate an aim and then come back in the present and sacrifice all the bodily functions, sacrifice all the present, not the present moment, but the things that you need to sacrifice for the attainment of that aim? It's difficult to do that when you are psychologically a weak male. And not saying that not shaking my fist at males saying you are psychologically weak. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a history where those things were actually done deliberately. And you could look outside. Don't take my theory for it. Look outside to see the amount of men you see by the block, to see the amount
Yep.
of men you see not taking up the responsibilities. You see the amount of women that's now in positions of influence and power, and the amount of men that shine away from responsibility. And it's almost like it's not their fault. It's almost like it's inside of you. It was done to you for such a long. And I will ask anybody to read that book, Willie Lynch Letters. I'll ask anybody just read that book to understand, and you will look at yourself and you will see, wow. So the women now are psychologically stronger than the men. The women now, they have the ability to make those sacrifices and to fight off procrastination, to fight off slowfulness, to fight off the things that take them on track from the aim. And our men falling prey to all of the psychological traps that are created by the enemy, by the friends, by the society. And it's it's very difficult to watch when you are able to see it. And it's very difficult to overcome as a male trying to overcome that. And like I'm not speaking from a place of being perfect. I'm speaking from a place of understanding what's going on. I'm trying to get out of it. And even speaking, males find it hard to speak, like to have a conversation, like just to do what I'm doing right now. It's almost like it's a fearful thing. I'm saying like, okay, sometimes you can have different personalities. Some males can be introvert, some males, but you cannot have 90% of your population of males being introvert. And even that too, and there's a reason why in the Aborigine society in Australia, there was something called the initiation process for males. And that's why they did that. They used to take the males and they used to send them up in the hills. And in the hills, they used to leave them there, cut their foreskins, something like that, and then allow them to come down the hill. And they had wild animals. And the society was saying the male who didn't make it back into the society, he was too weak to live into the society. So back then they had an initiation process to make them psychologically strong. But our initiation process, which is our schooling system, what can I say? Look at society.
You are correct, because if you look at the suicide rates as well, you see that there are more men who commit suicide than women. Reason being is because they cannot handle psychologically the stresses that life bring, and they take it too hard, especially those who have, I don't want to be as funny about it, but those who have these breakups, they take it so hard. That's the only solution that could relieve them of the pain. So you are correct. And this is definitely something that was passed down generation after generation, is to condition us that way, that we women have to have a stronger mindset and that men have to be a little bit weaker. But it's crazy because, as you said, now in society, if you look out, you see that more women are thriving and the men aren't, which is crazy because they're supposed to be the breadwinners, right? They're supposed to be the ones taking care of the family and whatnot. But then you're seeing that the roles are being reversed because of how everything is set up now.
Yeah, and that takes me to my question on societal issues, which is what would you say that the surge in crime can be attributed to? Is it the loss of values in our society and leaders in proper leadership positions?
I didn't hear you. You glitched for a while.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that took me to my next question, which is, would you say that the surge in crime can be attributed to the loss of values in our society and proper leaders in leadership positions?
Yes and no. Yes, because a lot of our young persons are raised by the TV, social media. The parents aren't there. Why aren't the parents there? Because they're trying to put bread on the table. They don't have a babysitter to look at the kid. So whatever that is being portrayed on the TV, through the tablet, phone, whatever that they have, is passed down onto their kid. Probably they leave the kids at home, the kids are in the community, walking around with other friends, whatever this friend, mother or dad or sibling is counseling them or giving them advice, you too would gravitate. You would take it in. You'd be like, oh, okay, I could take it because it's okay for me to do. So you're doing wrong, and your parents or your friends' parents or your friends' siblings is saying it's okay. You could go ahead and beat that person up because that person hit you first, and that's where crime surges because everybody believes, okay, I need to stand for myself. They forgot about forgiveness completely. They threw that out the window. And they forgot about having humility and respect, having discipline. All that is thrown out of the window because everybody wants to show that they're strong, they're macho. Nobody can do anything to them because they're the it thing in the community. And our government has failed us as well, where we don't put things in place to educate our young persons as to how to live life, as to what is out there so you could pursue it. We have so many talented young persons, so many, but there's no avenue whatsoever to pull them in, to have them use that skill, that ability to help them progress. So they're going into whatever gang that is happening in the community because it's the easy way out, fast money coming in, and whatnot. So it's both ways. Also, I believe if a child has the right, how would I put it, support system, they have these programs, Big Brother, Big Sister. If we have more of these, definitely they would see the need to change. They would know, okay, I have a better standpoint in life. I could definitely do this. I could definitely come out of the ghetto and move forward and become somebody worthy because you are worthy. But we don't have these systems. We don't.
Yeah, and that's so true. And one of the biggest contributing factors to this situation is that it all goes back to what we think we believe. Why
Yep.
is why is belief important? Because we have lost the importance for belief, and we have created a society. And one of the thought processes that I ask persons to think about. Yeah, all right. Just imagine that you were on a ship and you got shipwrecked on an island with 1,000 persons. And I tell them to think about what are the things that you are going to do to create a sustainable society which gives rise to a civilization. There are certain things that you must put in place, and not just physically. You must put certain value structures in place. What is most valuable to you at this point? Survival. Survival of what? Survival of life. How do persons have to think for them to for them to be for them to be inside of, so for them to be welcomed in that society? So first you must build a proper belief system for the 1,000 persons on that abandoned island. And what does that belief system comes with? First of all, we have to investigate that. And a lot of the genesis and a lot of the belief system that has bestowed onto us by the thousands of years of persons, and even the Bible, even the book that was, or that it was already there given to us. But
Yeah.
since we do not have to live through it again so that we could learn it from scratch, or so that we could die in our ignorance, because we were given a gift of how to think, how to behave, how to act, how to continue life and civilization across time and space. We find that these things are not working for us anymore. And it's almost like it's impossible for us to not realize that going against those values is exactly the problem with society. Somebody might attribute so many other problems, so many other things. That's not the real problem. So we have persons pointing at that, at the manifestation, at the outshoot of the problem, not looking at the underlying problem altogether. So they will say, oh, they will say, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough this. We don't have enough that. Like we make all kind of excuses to run away
Yes.
from the fact that the underlying problem, it starts with your belief system. How do you interpret the world? How does society or civilization was built for you to interpret the world? And is it bad? And and some social justice warriors will say, well, it's bad. Well, to what degree is it bad? Okay, oh, if it's bad, what are you going to replace it with? So you are trying to replace something that's been there for thousands of years that keeps civilization going for 1,000 of years, and you just come there 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 25 years ago. I mean, where is the humility? You say it's bad, you say it's not good, but you haven't found something to replace it with. What are you going to replace it with? Is it just the ideas,
Exactly.
the wishful ideas in your head of equality, or the wishful ideas in your head of social justice warriors? That's what you're going to replace it with? An ancient idea like that without any investigation? I mean, one of the biggest problems we have is lack of humility for something that we don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Correct. But a lot of us, we search for excuses to condone what we're doing, to say, okay, that's why we're doing it. And we're looking for the excuse, we're looking for another excuse just for us to show it's okay for us to do wrong. And that's sad, because if you're seeking for a reason for you to continue doing bad, why is that?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
are you actually thinking? Why are you thinking like that? So you are correct. You need to set these principles, these rules, so everything could be run smoothly. If, as you gave the example, the analogy that, okay, you got shipwrecked and everybody has to survive. What if there's no order and food is being wasted? Dying, people start dying, people start getting sick. You just taking medical stuff and nobody is there to log in and say, okay, we're down to this amount of painkillers. We need to cut it in half now, so everybody would take a little longer to endure the pain. If there's
And
no order, chaos is happening, and we have
that's
no.
that's exactly what it is. The lack of order brings chaos. And persons
Mm-hmm.
want to destroy the structure. Persons want to destroy the structure that give rise to the order that we're living in right now. Not regarding that without that order there is chaos. And you're totally correct. Structures are
Yes.
important. And I wrote a children's book about that. The giant magical plants. And the idea in the children's book I was trying to portray, and it's a Piagetian idea. It's a very complex idea that I break down into a children's book. And Piaget, he was an educational psychologist. Well, basically, generally, truthfully, he was a genetic epistemologist. He was creating knowledge based on gene behavior of human beings. And one of the things that he found that human beings develop in four stages. You have the sensory, the pre-sensory, like I forgot that when I was going to just college, but there are four stages as human beings develop in. And he was saying that a lot of the things that the school does is that it creates structure for the child to grow. And structure is important for cognitive development. That was an interesting idea. He said the fact that the child wake up in the morning at a specific time, have breakfast at a specific time, go and wait for the bus by the road for a specific time, go to the school, the bell ring at 9 o'clock, go to the class. The content is fine. There's a place for the curriculum. The curriculum is important, but going outside for break, knowing that break is 30 minutes, you have to go and use the bathroom to go back inside for you to have your other lessons throughout. Go outside for lunch. The whole structure that is created with
Yeah.
the schooling system is what is needed for cognitive development. And I symbolize structure as the father because that's why my book is The Giant Magical Plant. And the giant magical plant is basically the father. Because traditionally, the father is what symbolizes structure. That's why we call God the Father. That's what
Yeah.
symbolizes the structure. So if you want to get rid of the structure as far as getting rid of God altogether, what are you going to replace it with? Can we handle the chaos of civilization without that structure? Those are the things that we need to think about very, very, very carefully.
Yes, you are so correct. I saw something I'd like to share. This gentleman, he said that persons will be like, oh, we're slaves to God, to the belief, having faith. We're slaves to it. But to them, they're thinking that they're living life freely, but they're not. they're actually slaves to their vices. They're drinking, partying, promiscuity, killing, being committing gluttony, gambling, all of these things, because they're doing it over and over and over again to fill that void that they're searching for that they cannot find. And it's like, but that's slavery. We're being slaves. I am glad and happy to be a slave for Christ because I'm being protected, loved, taken care of. The many blessings and favors is coming through. I don't have to worry about a lot of stuff. I'm at peace. I'm the best slave. I'm fine. Leave me on that side. I don't want to be a slave to my vice, and then I'm always going after it, and it's actually crippling me on the inside. So that's one thing we definitely,
because you have to understand the person that's speaking there at this point, the person that's making that statement. You might look at the shell of the individual speaking, but you have to understand, why are you first of all interested in saying something like that? And what are you searching for? Are you searching for something that you didn't find? Did something disappoint you? And majority of the persons that I speak, and not speaking about persons, speaking about myself as well, because sometimes when you're searching for something and you are unable to understand what that thing is, the first thing you're going to do, and that's a human instinct, is to criticize what's already there. So if I'm going to, I want to show persons that I'm smart. I want to show persons that I'm conscious. So I'm going to criticize something that I don't even understand what I'm criticizing. I haven't spent 2 minutes of thinking about it. But the fact that I can concoct interesting sentences and words to criticize it, that makes me look like I'm a smart person. So I'm going to criticize it so that I could have the moral high ground. That's what's called virtue signaling. That's what you call virtue signaling. You virtue signal because exactly what you're saying. I could be doing a bad thing. I could be doing a terrible thing. But then because I'm pointing at you saying, Kimberly is doing this, that means I'm a good person automatically because I can tell you what Kimberly is doing. So I'm pointing out Kimberly's flaws, making myself look good in the eyes of the person that I'm pointing at Kimberly's flaws to. So that's what you call virtue signaling. And a lot of those virtue signaling comes from the fact that, like you said, the lack of self, lack of some divine connection. Something is missing.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter,
things definitely,
no, there's no amount of fulfilling of desires that can ever make anybody happy. There's no amount of sex and drugs and party and I'm speaking from experience. There's no amount of that could give you peace. There's no amount of living in the flesh, trying to chase happiness. Because I was speaking to a friend of mine recently, and I was telling him, it's so amazing that every person's talk about happiness all the time. If I have money in the bank, I'll not talk about money in the bank. If I have something at my house that I own, I'll not talk about it. The only way I can talk about something every day, posting about happiness every day, is because it's lacking. It's something that there's a void that I'm trying to, and happiness tends to be a drug sometimes. Person always chasing it. Like you spend your whole life chasing happiness. All what you want to be is happy. That means you're not happy. If all what you want to be is happy, that if I'm happy, I don't have to go on social media and tell persons I'm happy. I don't have to do that. That I'm happy. I'm living life. I live. I'm good. I don't have to go out and say that. I don't have to post it all over the place. Like that's not. And I'm not saying it's not good to show certain things that I do show certain achievements, certain things that I'm doing. But to constantly talk about wanting happiness and God don't make people happy. God make people miserable. You want to be happy. You want to be that's a sense of somebody might be crying out for help in a situation like that.
But to me, if you're always seeking happiness, when will you appreciate where you have come from, where you are now? When you will appreciate, you know what? I don't want to ever go through poverty again. Thank you, Lord, for removing me from that state. You know, if we don't go through certain situations, we will not be appreciative of what we have now. Because if you're boasting, boy, I have all that money, I have a nice ride. If you lose it today, how can you be appreciative of the fact that you had it before?
Mm-hmm.
What can you say about it? Can you say, oh, that vehicle I had before, I was going to visit Miss Jane every Sunday just to see how she's doing, to check up on her, bring her to groceries, but now I'm not even able to do that because I don't have a vehicle now. The Lord will know that you need the vehicle because you're actually doing a ministry with what He gave you. But if the only thing you care about is happiness, happiness, and you want to be at the hotel, you want to do this, you want to do that, you're not being appreciative of what you have. You will not
And
even understand why you're appreciative.
And one of the things that I want to say on that is that then human values can be defined or categorized in three ways. We value things that we value survival and pleasure. That's one category. We value power and we value meaning. And a vast majority, based on what I'm seeing around, a vast majority of human beings, especially in the Western world, in our Judeo-Christian Western society, is the fact that we value pleasure and survival. And pleasure and survival is basically a hedonistic drive that is grounded inside of the body. Whatever makes the body feel good, that's all what we want. Like we don't want anything. We try to run away from the struggle. We try to run away from the discomfort. But only in discomfort can you grow. But we don't want to grow. We want to continue chasing the pleasure. We want to continue. I'm not saying that pleasure, and persons might misquote me and say, you're saying pleasure is bad. No, I'm not saying that pleasure is bad. But when pleasure becomes all what you want in life, you work for pleasure. Everything you do is for pleasure. Your main value, what's most valuable to you as an individual is pleasure. And my belief, and I could be somebody can interpret that differently, and we can talk about it. But my belief is that meaning is the highest value of humanity. Whatever you do must be meaningful. And it's a Bible verse that said, straight and narrow is the path that leads to life. And that's exactly what meaning is saying. When I started, what I'm saying is that when something is meaningful to you, it doesn't only stays with you. You live of service to others. That's what gives you meaning. You live with purpose. What you do must be beneficial, not only to you, because only pleasure is beneficial to you. You're only going to do it for you. That's for you to feel good. But if you do it for it to be beneficial to society, for it to be beneficial to other stakeholders, so to speak, you find fulfillment and you'll not chase happiness. Fulfillment is actually higher than happiness. Joy is higher than happiness. Happiness is the attainment of stimulus in the body. Fulfillment is attainment of a higher structure, a higher ethic, a higher objective. And those things are world apart. Those things are very world apart. So I'm going to ask you for the last question, so we could end on that one. We have been bombarded with the idea of inequality on the social front. A lot of inequality we talk about. We talk about black versus white. We talk about men versus women. We talk about LGBTQRSTUVWXY versus everybody else. Can that be a contributing factor to the destruction of our culture and our social order?
Definitely, 100%. Because everybody is presented something that they feel comfortable in following or in believing. I will put it like this because we have persons who are black community, black this, black that, and they're so focused on that they created this entire community where they don't buy anything else if it's not from a black person's shop, which is crazy. And that is actually putting a division now. It's actually showing that you're racist. You can look at it all how you're being racist. You want to only support black persons. You don't want to support white people because white people have been oppressive and whatnot. You're following their trend. You're following what they actually have been doing for years towards us. Why would that? It's just crazy. And all of these things, again, is the work of the enemy. I don't care who say what. That's his agenda, to put division, to separate, to create these new cultures. They call it new age practices. You're creating all of these different communities. You're separating everybody, but nobody is following the right community, which is Christ. He's everywhere. He's not separating himself. He sat with the sinful. He sat with the righteous. He sat with those that didn't know anything about him. All of these things. He didn't seclude himself. So why is it that we're allowing these things to happen to us? It's because we want to be in a community where we can express who we are. We want to be happy about it. We want to be prideful. We want to be, okay, this is my purpose in life, is to be in love with women or to be in love with men. That's not your purpose. That's not who you are. Who you are is that you were created to do things for the kingdom of God. That's our purpose in life. It's written in the book. That is our purpose. Our purpose is not to be entrepreneurs. Our purpose is not to is not to be moms. Our purpose is not to be dads. Our purpose is to serve Christ, and everything else falls after. He said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and everything will be granted unto you. Surround yourself with things about God. Do everything with him involved, and then you'll see things going through. These divisions that's happening is crazy. We're putting so many ideas in the heads of our children. Even adults now are changing who they are just to fit in, just to be in the trend. My goodness, stand out, be your own person, and see how things can run.
Well, I will not add anything else to that. I think that was very well articulated, and it came from somewhere that was divinely inspired. So, Kimberly, thank you for having this conversation with me. I think we can continue to have conversations like this, and let's continue on the journey from strength to strength.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and continue doing the good work. This is very much indeed needed, and I pray that everything goes well for you and that you reach far with this initiative.
Thank you.